Admissions officers essay coaches of Reddit. What was the most pretentious application you've ever seen? Story 1. I got to interview some students for a special program in my undergrad. It was highly competitive and lots of people wanted it. Young woman comes in, I offer her a seat. I prefer to stand. This won't take long. No, my dad is the dean of one of the colleges and my mom is one of the professors who established this program. In getting in, I emphasize that she really should take a seat. She refused again. So I say, hey, this interview, me approving you is part of the process. You have to do well in this to get in. You'll say I did well or my parents will make life for you. Her parents had zero impact on anything in my life and I told her as much. After articulating this to her, I said, I'm going to give you a chance to walk out the door and restart this interview. Fresh start. She lost it and yelled at me. For like 5 minutes, I filled out the interview sheet with direct quotes from her tantrum. She didn't get in. A few days after decisions were made, I got an email from her father who was, in fact, a dean. He asked me to come in and have a chat with him. It was totally a request. I went to talk to him. When I went to see him, he had a copy of the interview sheet where I had several direct quotes from his daughter. Some of the quotes were awful and directed at me, my family, and basically everything she could hit on. He apologized profusely for his daughter and asked if she could redo the interview. He was leaning on me a bit at this point. I told him the choices had already been made and she was not selected. The whole thing was mind-blowing. She was so entitled. Story 2. I was a medical school interview coach, earning some extra money through med school. Some applicants were great. Others were what you'd expect from kids whose parents are paying a tutor to teach them how to act normal. Our med school interviews are easy to pass, but difficult to do well in. They involve generic questions like your passion or interests, ethical scenarios, decision-making questions, knowledge of healthcare topics, etc. There have been memorable answers to mock questions. In terms of pretentious, I asked one guy what his hobbies were and he said he loved Armani suits and buying expensive coffee blends. Not a great answer, but what killed it was that he began describing the smoothness of the bean and licking and smacking his lips together in wet squelching noises. Another applicant's dad was a successful surgeon, so he argued in his answers I basically already know how to be a doctor, through osmosis. Head failed the entrance exam 7 times and his dad opened a lot of doors for him, getting him research editor positions for his CV, etc. There were complex family dynamics. He would say really inappropriate things like, when I'm a doctor, I can buy and sell you and all your friends. All I have to do is pass this stupid exam and interview and my dad will get me a spot in the training program. You'll be struggling for years. Head then flipped to complaining for half an hour about how his sister gets treated like a princess, and call me at 10 p.m. just to talk. I declined further sessions but was pretty sympathetic, to be honest. Whenever his dad called to arrange sessions and materials, he was very pejorative toward his son. I had trouble hearing him during one of the phone calls because of background noise until he stepped outside. Later found out that he had been calling me, a tutor, during his son's graduation ceremony. He missed his son going on stage to receive his diploma because he was arranging a booking time with me. It placed a lot of his son's defensive behavior in context. And no, he has not been accepted into a med school. That was 2 years ago and he emailed only a few weeks ago to request access to my Google Drive to brush up on some things. I granted it because when your answer to a conflict and teamwork question is, tell them I'm sorry that they're wrong, no amount of Microsoft Word documents will change your performance. Story 3. I worked in a very religious private school's admissions department for a few weeks. Filing applications, the parents had to write a letter about their child and why the school would suit them. I'll always remember the man who wrote 3 pages about how successful a businessman he was, how he owned several businesses, how good he was at the school's main sport, and then attached a large check to the last page. Not a word about the kid. What I remember most, the rejection letter from the principal with a thinly veiled insinuation that bribery was immoral and not acceptable at this school. Story 4. Letter simply said something along the lines of, let me an X-Hall named after Grandpa, he donated a ton of money, so this letter means nothing. He was right, got right in, got a love pay to play. Story 5. I have one. A longtime friend's mother reviews applications at an elite college. I saw her recently and she was telling us about some of the essays. One was from a girl who clearly came from a background of great privilege. She described a day of shopping and dining at swanky places with her parents in the big city one day. At the end of the day, they came across a homeless man sitting on the sidewalk begging for money or food. She initially passed him by. But then, seeing the American flag flying on the corner up ahead on the next block, remembered what this great country of ours was built on, as well as what life is truly about, and went back to give this homeless person her restaurant leftovers, all described with much self-congratulation. I'm paraphrasing a lot of it, but the part in quotes is exact and will likely be repeated for some time to come, accompanied by chuckling, by my friend and me. The country was built on, and life itself is about, giving a homeless person your half-eaten burger and fries. And last but not least, huge thanks to the person who gave me silver. Wow, what a nice surprise. Edited. Story 6 doesn't quite answer your question, but we recently had someone we had rejected for our most competitive course email us. He said that he regretted to inform us that he was unable to accept our rejection and would see us on the first day of the course very soon. Story 7. I once got a binder with 19 letters of recommendation from what seemed every adult who ever vaguely met the student. We also got photocopies of her scuba license and lifeguard certification. This was just for a college with a 98 acceptance rate. We also had an essay question that was if you could spend a day with anyone in the world, living or dead, who would it be and why? And some kid wrote about how the college admissions racket discounted who he was as an individual, and that he wanted to spend the day with the college admissions officer so they'd really get to know him. Came off as a bit creepy, and again 98 acceptance rate. If you could write a coherent sentence and didn't murder anyone, you were going to be accepted. We didn't freaking care about your personality. Edit yikes, this blew up. I tried to answer some of the questions below, but hey race a summary criminal records worked with international students who were going to get visa applications rejected with felonious pasts. Letting them down early prevented them from spending a lot of time money trying to enroll when they wouldn't be able to. Why we had an essay with that kind of acceptance rate to make sure the students could string a few sentences along, and we'd out the students who weren't willing to put in the effort and had no intention of enrolling. Scuba girl not applying for marine bio. Only 3 to 4 letters came from people who seemed to have strong relationships to her. The rest were vague, brief, polite letters from people who were vague acquaintances, sometimes from several years prior. Childhood camp counselor who had her for 1 week in 4th grade. It was a waste of our time to read them, as they told us nothing. She sent us a copy of her scuba certification, but there was another certificate 7th grade honor roll or something that was original, so we ended up paying to mail the entire binder back to her in the end so she'd have her original. It also was annoying AF because it didn't fit in our filing cabinet and had to live on my desk for months. I'm not disclosing the school I worked at, but it was a private non-profit. I actually honestly believe the faculty were good instructors and the students were going to get a decent education. Being tuition revenue reliant, virtually no endowment, they made some cynical decisions in the admissions office to make it appear we were more competitive selective, because most people, especially parents who could write a check, assume that's the only mark of a good school. Story 8 I went to space camp on a scholarship program after writing an essay to get in. One of the kids in my group who time and time again proved he wasn't smart enough to write his own essay bragged about how his mother wrote his and he didn't even want to be there. Messed up on both their parts to take away an opportunity from someone who actually wanted to go. Story 9 for me, it's the students that disparage the very ones that provide their application support. The kids that bash their coaches for not starting them for X Games or complain about their teachers who give them too much homework. Meanwhile the recs and coaches are writing about how great this kid is. Never a good look. Edit whoa, this is my new top comment. Had no idea it was my cake day. And also source former admissions counselor. Thank you all. Edit 2 grammars. Story 10 a whole essay about how it had long been her dream to study at the prestigious University of Leicester and all the incredible gifts life would bestow on her for living her dream. In an application for a university that was not Leicester. Story 11 obligatory, not an admissions counselor, but I was a master's student who helped a family friend's high schooler edit her college admission essay. The prompt was something about the greatest struggle they've experienced that made them who they are. Her response: my greatest struggle in life was that I was too academically advanced for my age and I was not challenged enough in school. Yikes. Story 12 I used to tutor at uni, and helped occasionally with my tutees applications. One thing I always encouraged them to do was to mention their aspirations after graduating, and to mention why specifically this university. One kid, who'd been a pretentious the whole time, actually wrote in his essay that he didn't really care about the academic part because his dad was just going to give him a job when he graduated anyways. He chose the unis he was applying to based on how impressive they sounded, and how good the party life was. I kept in touch with his sister. She was super smart and studied the same subject as me, so I helped her out with career advice etc. later on. She dropped into conversation later, with a noticeable bit of glee, that her brother was going through a challenging patch because his father informed him that no, Daddy was not going to give him a free ride into a cushy job, and did expect him to get a real job. Edit since you all love the word tutee so much, allow me blow your tiny minds. Ready mentor, mentee. Story 13 I reviewed an application from someone with test scores and grades in the upper percentiles of the school's average. As long as the essay was inoffensive and decent we would let him in, but his essay was easily the most awful thing I had ever read to the point where I assumed that he was trying to sabotage his application. However, after we rejected him, he not his parents called the school complaining and sent an appeal begging for acceptance. His essay started out okay. The first paragraph he talked about why he chose this school that was the prompt and what he hoped to achieve in his time in college. So far so good, but then it got weird. He talked about how he wanted to stop discrimination, the applicant was white, and how he saw racism for the first time in middle school kickball. Whenever a black kid would come up to bat, all of the outfielders would spread out. The applicant described this as systemic racism, and his way of solving it was to kick the ball further than any black person on his team, which he did. First of all, the whole racism topic came out of nowhere and the story didn't tie into anything. After this he started talking about his favorite podcasts, even mentioning some by name. If you want to know more about my personality, just listen to this podcast and you'll get a better understand of who I am as a person. He closed the paper by saying, I would like to close this paper with a quote, which I thought was a joke because there was nothing left on the page, just that single sentence. Apparently he just hit enter on his keyboard a bunch of times because on the next page was the quote that he wanted to close the essay with. It was a full page-long manuscript of a Richard Pryor comedy routine about going to Africa for the first time. Yes, he kept all of the N-words in the routine, and even went so far as to replace all of the soft RS with hard RS for no apparent reason. At the end were 3 links to the podcast that he mentioned which I didn't listen to because the essay was printed out when I read it so I couldn't click the links. Story 14. I'm a college admissions consultant, and the worst one I've read was a full meta-essay about how much the applicant loved college admissions and writing admissions essays. It was arrogant and aloof throughout, but the kicker was when the student called herself an elite applicant with outstanding admissions essay skills right there in the essay. I felt sorry for her because it felt like the stress of the process had given her a Stockholm Syndrome obsession with it. I tried to bring her back to reality gently, but she wasn't having it. She didn't get in, shucked Pikachu. JPG edit. If you're working on a college application, please come check out our applying to college. Story 15. Not an admissions officer, but I was part of an admissions committee when I served as faculty at a wonderful university. One admissions essay compared his act of applying to the law school with that of a Palestinian child facing oppression. The closing line was bravery comes in many forms. A Palestinian child picking up a stone against a legal occupation, and me writing this essay, both are comparable, still haven't forgotten it. Edit. Thank you all kindly for your feedback and upvotes. Had never shared this story with anyone before, glad I had an opportunity to share. Being a professor is weird and amazing. Oh, the stories I have. Story 16. I used to help out with auditions for the acting program at my school, and one girl came in with a scented resume. Before she walked in, the head of acting was like during the interview, do not mention the resume, she was not a good actor. The scented resume was clearly something she thought was cute and charming enough to score her some personality points. Nope. Story 17. Not an admissions officer, but I have evaluated placement essays for first year writing first semester, second semester, or in rare cases, tested out completely. I remember reading one about how selfies were important because of such reasons as so people can know where you are, and if you travel you can use them to take pictures of monuments and landmarks. This student essentially, though I'm not sure intentionally, made the argument that every picture that is taken has to be a selfie, and if they weren't in the picture it wasn't worth anything. I put them in first semester. Edit. Wow, thank you for all the upvotes. For clarification, this occurred during the summer of 2014 based on the content of the paper. It was made clear that this person thought the only function of the phone camera was to take selfies. There were also a fair amount of mechanical errors along with a lot of logical errors. Story 18. I saw an LSAT writing prompt that started with the line Hitler had a few good ideas. Really doesn't matter what you say after that. It also had absolutely nothing to do with the prompt. Edit. For clarity, the LSAT has a prompt that consists of some group trying to make a decision between 2 mundane options. Your goal is to argue for one option over the other. That's it. In no way, shape or form did the scenario have anything remotely to do with Hitler, nor did this person pick one of the sides. He simply wrote an essay about Hitler. Have fun not getting into law school. Story 19. I used to do a little recruitment from time to time for a large cruise line based in the UK. I once had an application through where the applicant's CV was literally him asking himself questions and then proceeding to answer them. It read something like this. So, you're probably thinking, who is this guy? Well, I'm a hard-working individual who isn't afraid to go above and beyond. Why go above and beyond, you say? Well, I believe the customer always comes first, etc. You get the idea. Story 20. Self. I wrote about how anti-intellectual religion was. I don't even remember the prompt. That was what I was writing about no matter what. Every other word was a thesaurus drop-in. Jesus Christ, it was bad. Story 21. Every essay that uses famous quotes as if they're the first person to ever think of using a famous quote in an essay. No, you're not original. I actually don't mind quotes if there's a good story attached to it. But it's rare. People usually just throw in a random quote to sound smarter or more cultured. Execution is key. Also, when people write about my school to make it sound like they've done their research and they've clearly just regurgitated information from the website. I know where I work. I don't need you to recite the website back to me. Also, now I'm worried you'll get busted for plagiarism if you become a student here because you clearly just copied and pasted our website content into your essay. Don't make someone question your academic integrity in your admissions essay. Story 22. Not an admissions officer, but I went to high school with a girl who was top of the class, applying to all the IVAs for 0 unweighted GPA, APs, etc. She wrote her essay about how she overcame stereotypes by being smart and a cheerleader. I'd say that's pretty pretentious. Story 23. Somewhat pretentious, or perhaps just plain weird. I had an individual offer me money to write an application essay which was about himself. He had to have some sort of. Story 24. My best friend was salutatorian of her class of 600. She only applied to one college and it was an Ivy League. She is an upper-middle-class white girl who plays the harp. She wrote her college essay on being a jet-setter. It pains me to say that she was completely shocked when she got flat-out rejected. Story 25. This might be too off-topic, but there was that 5-year-old Chinese kid who had a 15-page resume. It seemed to be just a list of random his parents forced him to do, and they're outright lies. Story 26. I am not an admissions officer. I am a school ambassador, give tours for prospective students' families. And our office is where admissions counselors make decisions. We work closely together as I need to be able to answer questions about admissions. I remember a horror story, where a student sent an application, had decent scores, a decent essay, but had almost no extracurriculars. This is a bit of a red flag as our school has a unique program for which community interaction is really important. About a week after decisions are posted, admissions receive an email from the mother of the student described. She proceeded to rip apart the entire admissions team, saying they and I quote are void of any talent or ability to contribute to society. Yet, when you're meant to do your horribly mundane, underpaying and useless job, you can't even do that right. She proceeded to talk about how her daughter was going to be the next president of the United States and how we messed up real bad. This email was met with a response among the tune of "We're sorry you feel you weren't given a good chance. You can appeal and well look again etc." Which is a courtesy that almost all schools will do. The mother replied sorry for paraphrasing like why would we want to go to your horrendous, vile institution. The grounds of your campus aren't worth the bottom of my daughter's feet. Yada yada yada. Her daughter is the second, third, fourth and fifth coming of Jesus Christ all rolled into one. Yada yada yada. Then she got personal. She was like, and by the way Jenny, different name but referring to supervisor of admissions. I just thought you should know that you are extremely unprofessional on your social media. Jenny is literally the kindest human being I've met in my entire life, and the worst thing on her social media is like her at a restaurant with her family and an alcoholic beverage on the table. Fun times edit fix some grammar stuffs edit because everyone is getting so mad in the comments. Just want to go over a few things. When it's a high-rated private institution, we have far more applicants than we can fit onto campus. We select what we believe are the best candidates based on factors other than grades. It's a holistic approach. We look at everything. 2. This is somewhat unique to our school. Some schools only care about grades. Some schools care mostly about grades. Some schools care about grades and work sports curriculars community involvement equally. Some schools don't care about grades. 3. We value the outside stuff more so than most schools around our rankings because of our specific programs. It's about matching students and school together. I will tell families who have serious concerns about some of the programs that would favor a more active and involved person that maybe our school isn't a good fit. This isn't because their child isn't good enough. It's because sometimes things just don't fit, for we are not the only university for higher education in the world. If someone is denied here, they can certainly go other places. 5. Having extracurriculars doesn't make you the best people, it just means my school feels like you will fit better if you do. Story 27. Obligatory. Not an admissions officer, but my senior year of high school, we read our college admissions essays for our English classes. One student's broad topic was admirable. He wrote about ageism, and that it was sad that it stopped people from doing the things they loved. Young people should knit, old people should rollerblade, stuff like that. However, the actual bulk of the essay was him describing how much he loved to play with stuffed turtles. He got into a highly competitive university with that essay, but mostly because his parents worked there. Edit changed no to knit. Story 28. I'm a college admissions consultant, and this is a list of common essay mistakes I give my clients. I've seen all of these many times. Warning, if you're a college applicant and you don't have a solid list of potential topics or a rough outline of your essay, stop reading now, seriously. Don't start with lists of rules or errors because they will feel limiting or excessive, and will likely stifle creativity and actually focus your attention and energy on what you shouldn't be doing rather than devoting it to creating new ideas or topics. Okay, do you have a rough draft or an outline or at least some topics? Really good. Read on, and remember that these are just guidelines, so if you really want to break one of these rules, you can. Just recognize that it's risky to do so and you will need to write a really great essay to make the risk pay off. 1. Don't choose a common topic. It's possible to write a good essay on a common topic but so much more difficult because of the sheer volume that comes in. These include the standard sports injury championship, mission trip, divorce, moving to a new city, death of a grandparent, and slightly meta getting into this college would be the culmination of my dreams essays. To a lesser degree, this also includes soup du jour essay topics like cryptocurrency, social media, or whatever else is trending. Yes, it is theoretically possible to have a good essay on any of these common topics, but every AO rolls their eyes and dies a little inside every time they have to read another one too. Make sure you write about something that is actually important to you. Full meta essays about college applications gradists feel like they are clever and creative, but they aren't that distinctive or original, and there's no way the college application process is that big of a part of who you are because you've only been doing it for 7 months tops. People who write about this are trying to project intelligence and depth, but it does the opposite. Other people write about things they think AOs want them to write about. What they actually want you to write about is you. 3. Don't write about super polarizing or sensitive issues. Don't be dogmatic, political, religious, cult-like, overly dramatic, aggressive, racist, or argumentative. Often you come across as somewhat crass or blunt simply because you don't have the space to explain your complex views fully enough and the topic is so delicate. Other times your opinions clash with the deeply held views of whoever is reading your essays. Again, it's possible to write good essays on delicate topics, but it's risky, just like killing a fly in your grandmother's house with a baseball bat. For example, one student got into Stanford with a 100-word supplement on what was important to him that was just Black Lives Matter 33 times. A grand slam on the poor insect, but it was very risky and could have backfired badly for. Don't curse too much, try too hard to incite pity or catharsis, be overly pessimistic, self-deprecating, talk about your forays into illegal unethical activities, or do anything else dark, depressing, or weird. You want to stand out as unique, but not like this. You can curse a little and brush up against dark or challenging material, but you want your essay to portray a positive view of you. See the essay FAQ for more details. 5. Avoid using too many big words. Do not repeat, do not touch that thesaurus. you want this essay to be your voice. You're smart and you want the AO to know that, but they will already see your SAT verbal score and your transcript, so you don't need to hit them in the face with a thesaurus. Using too many big words sounds unnatural and makes it sound like you're trying to be impressive rather than expressive. Instead of coming away with wow, this guy is really passionate and a creative writer, they might just find you insincere, boring, and uninspiring. Big words in excess drain emotion and jar the reader out of the story and remind them that they're sitting in a windowless room evaluating essays. They are way overused in these essays too, and often evoke a here we go again sigh. You can sound full of yourself and arrogant as well as out of touch. Remember that you want to be likable, personable, and charismatic. These will be more impressive to an AO than people who try too hard to impress with intellect and vocabulary. 6. Take time to edit review your essays. I've seen essays list the wrong school. I've seen a student literally misspell her own first name in the essay. I've seen essays that scream that English is not your first language so loudly they are hard to get through. You don't want any of those. Review your essays, revise them, and get someone else to help give you feedback too. The essay section of this book has many useful tips for reviewing essays. 7. Don't make your essays low-effort or last-minute rush jobs. Too many bright students are used to churning out an essay in a couple hours and getting an A almost by default. Or they're used to putting things off until the last minute but succeeding anyway because they're very bright. Or maybe they're shotgunning too many schools and are already sick of it. Or maybe they don't actually want to go to that particular school so they don't really try. Whatever the reason, this is a recipe for disaster on college application essays because they are supposed to be much more than the typical writing you produce. They should be thoughtful, introspective, expressive, creative, inspiring, interesting, and revealing. You won't get that kind of compelling writing in a single draft or with a lazy approach. Usually, when an essay was thrown together with little effort or very quickly, it shows that always communicates that you either don't care enough to give it the time and effort it deserves, or that you aren't capable of better. Either way, it's a fast one-way ticket to the waitlist. 8. Don't try to write about your entire life from a 30,000-foot view. You simply don't have space to say everything about yourself, so don't try. Pick a few attributes and try to tell one story that showcases those. If you bite off more than you can chew, you probably won't end up saying anything really compelling about yourself. The more you zoom out, the more every student looks the same. It's only when you talk to them, get to know them, spend time with them, learn about them, and engage them that you start to see how different, vibrant, interesting, talented, and incredible they are. So give the AO an opportunity to get close to you in the essay. Go small, zoom in on one story, not your whole life. Don't use an introduction. Just jump right in and let the story fill in the details as you go. 9. Don't use pithy aphorisms, cliches, or generalities even if you made them up they're original to you. Don't try to include wholesome-sounding life lessons or broad sweeping statements about the world or humanity. None of these. I learned more from them than they did from me. By striving to achieve greatness we can become more than we ever thought possible. Only by helping others can a person truly realize their potential in the world. I am far stronger than I knew and I'm excited to face the next set of challenges. Those are all the worst and are an instant eye roll and not this again. Sigh. 10. Don't fail to complete a portion of the application. On multiple occasions I have been reviewing an app and the next section loads and it's empty or the essay is only partially complete. I refresh the page and still get just half an essay. I reach out to the admins to make sure there's not a clerical or systems error. Then I ask them to check the student record and if possible follow up with a student to make sure they completed the section. Sometimes we get a response with a missing section and sometimes we don't. It's hard for this to turn out well. Many schools would not be this gracious and would simply move on to the next app. If you're paying the app fee, get your money's worth by actually filling out the whole thing and completing your essays. 11. Don't be so academic or stick too close to the prompt. Some prompts are more dangerous for falling into this mistake, but so often students are conditioned to answer questions directly and fully like they would for school. The prompt is primarily there to get you to talk about yourself, not to assess your ability to answer a question completely and fully. So if it asks why you want to go to X school, don't write 500 words praising the school for being so awesome. They already know how awesome they are. What they want to know about is you and how you fit the school. Make sure your response addresses the prompt and that it's clearly written for that school, but don't treat it like an exam question. Think of it more like someone asked you that question on a date to find out more about you. Let the response be more reflective of you than it is of the prompt. Story 29. Psychiatric nurse. Studying for PhD, didn't know what dementia is. Having now fully woken up I realize this doesn't really fit the criteria, but may fit the spirit of it, so have left it up. Interviewed a locum who applied for a job in a community mental health MH team that specializes in diagnosis and support for people with dementia. She was a qualified psychiatric nurse with an advanced degree and studying for a PhD. Her CV was impressively full of achievements and innovative work such as setting up and running a cafe for people with MH problems and had apparently got an award for same. She turns up for interview with dog hairs all over her dirty clothes, hair unbrushed. This would not have been an issue particularly if she had actually been able to give a definition of dementia or had known the name of any of the standardized tests every MH professional would know and used at least one. She also couldn't tell me any of the medications used to mitigate the effects of dementia. Although there had been a lot of controversy in the news about the NHS allowing them to be prescribed at that time, we didn't employ her. Another team did, however. A few months later she was asked for interview again. My bad, we were very short-staffed and there were a couple of us going through the myriad of CVs sent by agencies. Also the CV showed employment by this other team. I go to get her from the waiting room, she looks up, her face fell and she just said oh no. Anywho, because she now had some experience we interviewed again. Nope. After the interview I called the other team. She had been so awful they decided to never employ agency staff again, which was short-sighted of them. A lot of agency staff are amazing, but you need people who can hit the ground running and therefore must interview thoroughly. Story 30 husband of a friend of mine went to a prestigious college for grad school, where his father happened to be an alumni and hold some sort of executive position. Dad not only pulled all kinds of strings to get son in, but he wrote his essay. This guy isn't at all ashamed and loves to mention his alma mater in passing conversation. Story 31 not pretentious, but I had a Chinese student write in their application I hardly ever waste water, paper or rice. Presumably he was conflating economics, the degree subject being applied for, with being economical. He also said that he had found a phone and had returned it to the owner even though he was Russian. Story 32 if anyone is reading this looking for advice on what not to do, general rules are avoid quotes. It is fine to have idols and talk about them, but quotes take up valuable space and word count, and it's not even your own words. Better to make a subtle reference to it or talk about the meaning of said quote and why that inspires you. Show don't tell. It is a waste of time saying I went to X for experience without talking about what you learned from that experience. Otherwise it's just a meaningless non-comment. Hobbies don't just put reading. It's nothing special to say you read as if it makes you different, and links into the above point. Talk about what genre, what you've learned from it, and how it will help you going forward in the role. Story 33 wasn't exactly a coach, but in my junior year of high school we peer-reviewed each other's essays, and the guy I got paired with, who was sending this to MIT, made the assertion that I am an asset to your institution, for when I am wildly successful I will be sending money back to the school through charitable donations. I will also give your school incredible amount of publicity. When I am interviewed by the press he didn't get in. Story 34 part of honors college at my school. One of our essay questions was to pick a word that describes you and why. One kid chose literally because as a kid he had the mental acuity to know what the word actually meant. So when his mother would tell him not to touch his sister, he would touch her clothes instead and other things of that nature. It is now a running gag within the group.